space to contemplate their transgressions. Following their exile, the Dark Jedi did find something, but it was not remorse or penance. The Dark Jedi found the Sith. This is the order and era of Sith that I would like to discuss today concerning their power and the dark side compared to more modern Sith. As the Dark Jedi mingled and bred with the Sith, a new order was formed from which the truly gifted Dark Lords would originate. Once we were mighty Jedi of the Republic, brothers in the Force. But the great schism between the dark side and the light side turned Jedi against Jedi. Our ancestors were defeated, driven off, cast out. This era of Sith possessed both the raw connection to the dark side of their ancestors of the pure blood, as well as the academic achievements of the Dark Jedi. Here it is proven that simply being a Sith pureblood or not did not dictate one's power in the dark side, as some of the most notable of this era, such as Marco Ragnos and Naga Sadow, were half-breeds. Half-breeds between the ancient race of the Sith and the Dark Jedi. The power of these Sith were more dictated by a combination of their strength and connection to the dark side, as well as the doctrine that they studied. These Sith even constructed a problem to the ancient race such as Marco Ragnos. Here it is proven that they possessed both the raw connection to the dark side of their ancestors of the pure blood, as well as the academic achievements of the Dark Jedi. Here it is proven that simply being a Sith pure blood or not did not dictate one's power in the dark side, as some of the most notable Dark Lords of this era, such as Marco Ragnos and Naga Sadow, were half-breeds. Half-breeds between the ancient race of the Sith and the Dark Jedi. The power of these Sith were more dictated by a combination of their strength and connection to the dark side, as well as the doctrine that they studied.
Be advised, gas is closing in. Proceed to the safe zone.
Roger that.
Mark out. I'm going.
Heading this way.
Contact!
Eliminate all targets in the AO.
Fucked up shit is that?
Marking targets. You cleared hot.
This is Loader 2-0. Good copy. Cluster strike away.
Enemy contact!
No fucking way. Maybe. Those were all headshots, y'all.
If they survive, they can redeploy.
My body was just saying. I don't know. There's more.
Dropped him!
Taking fire! No!
The Verdansk is not for them.
This is a gulag. Survive and you can redeploy. Fight's ready. You can always have a go at these bastards while you wait. Give them some choice words or smash their mugs with a well-placed stun. Fight's kicking off. Get ready to fight. You're next. Your teammates done in. They're returning to base. You win this fight and you return to the front line. But if you lose, you're done here. Sort them out or capture the objective. Go back to the front line. You've earned it.
Be careful.
Your teammate is redeploying. Stand by. Be advised, your teammate has been marked as a high-value target. Keep him secure.
Yep. That's why you didn't fucking. Got it. We got it. You just get
I found this if you need it. I found this if you need it. Body armor here.
Thanks you on that.
Hey, there is. Two
Go in
people
it.
here. On green. Oh fuck. I don't know. I'm gonna land on blue. They're not on top. I don't see them. Shots out. Oh fuck, blue. Fuck. Junkie, where the fuck was it? Where was that good fucking shit at?
Enemy vehicle.
You mark it on the map somewhere. Let me know. I'm trying to land on you. Fuck, I'm gonna come to you. Damn.
Friendly loadout drop on the
All right.
way.
Thanks, team.
You're not done in yet.
Oh fuck. How many was it?
Marking new safe zone.
Oh.
Aid station marked.
Sith even constructed a prophecy similar to that of the Jedi Chosen One that told of a Sith Lord that would one day rise to destroy the Order, but that it would strengthen and empower it as the Sith would return mightier than ever. The technology and knowledge of the fallen Jedi mixed with the potent connection of the pure-blooded Sith, and appeared to have created the ultimate dark side warriors. However, tragedy struck. The Sith Lord Naga Sadow became too ambitious, attacking Republic space, and being defeated after being driven back into Sith space. What resulted was a scattering of the Sith Order, and in many's opinion, the end of the golden age of the Sith Empire. The Sith, however,
Aid
would
station
again be
marked.
reborn, but much differently. Just as before, the Sith would stem from the Jedi, as the Sith-like Exar Kun and Revan would emerge during this time period.
Hell no.
Here, a plot was discovered that changed things, however. remnants of the ancient Sith had survived, as the Dark Lord Vitiate had lived beyond the death of Naga Sadow, as well as the invasion of the Sith homeworld by the Republic, and had rebuilt the Sith Empire from the shadows, being one of the last remnants of the golden age of the Sith Empire. Although far less pure-blooded Sith or even half-breeds remained, the reigning Emperor had risen from the glory days of the old Empire, with his original body having been a half-breed Sith.
Drop me, get their money, and I will go buy one back.
This again, though, would not last, as centuries of conflict with the Jedi and the Republic led to their eventual defeat and near extinction of the Sith yet again. After the Sith became somewhat reorganized again as fallen Jedi, now deemed Darth Ruin, the Jedi Order took drastic action to eliminate all of the Sith once and for all, having been plagued by them long enough. The Jedi granted a member of their order, Khan, great armies and power, and for a time he successfully defeated the remaining Sith. However, he became power drunk and found himself agreeing with much of the Sith philosophy, as he constantly came into close contact with them. Unfortunately, Khan too would be seduced by the power of the dark side. Deeming himself a Sith Lord, the Jedi were forced to raise arms against Khan. It was here the chosen one of the Sith, foretold long ago, would finally emerge. Darth Bane, who was indoctrinated into the Sith, was disgusted by Khan, stating the Brotherhood of Darkness was nothing but a twisted perversion of the Jedi Order, a dark parody of the very thing we stood against. Darth Bane believed it was disgraceful that Khan had been a former Jedi, and resolved to destroy.
I'm moving.
Egg station over here.
Top.
Egg station over here.
Oh fuck, is that my closest one? Ugh. Almost getting sniped at. Fuck, are you kidding me? I have an armor box. And a satchel. There should be a zip line. Either on
Enemy UAV overhead.
purple. Let me hit you with the plate.
There, moving.
Fuck, have you been to both sides? Really? Oh, fuck, it's
Gas is inbound. Marking new safe
I'm
zone.
taking the stairs right now. Oh, take the stairs. Motherfucker, no, I can't. Fuck it, dude. Fuck. I don't know. I wanna go to downtown Africa, Al.
Marked a target.
Gas is closing in.
I'm gonna grab a fucking kilo and a SPR. Actually, no, fuck my kilo. I'm gonna grab an M13 and SPR. Yeah, see anybody? Oh.
Enemy UAV overhead.
Ah. It's pissing me off right now.
Enemies in the area. Enemies in the area.
I'm tempted to jump.
Contact!
One,
Enemy contact!
Enemy UAV overhead.
two, three.
Enemy contact! There, moving.
Ooh.
Realize that.
Ooh, they're scattered as a motherfucker though.
Movement. Never mind. Marked a target.
Enemies in the area.
Marked a target. Movement.
Yeah, moving.
He hopped in that fucking car.
Understood.
Enemy cluster
jump
strike
off the roof.
incoming. Take cover.
Okay, I'm headed towards them. Oh, why the fuck do I jump? Oh my god. On the point.
Grenade out.
Yeah. Fuck out right now. Down one. Oh shit, there's three.
Gas
There's
is
two.
closing. Get
One
to the new
this side and
safe
one
zone.
last side.
Enemy movement!
Oh, and one on.
X-ray.
Stupid fucking game. Bullshit, these fucking
Aid station marked.
MP5s
Destroy Khan
are
and take
ridiculous.
over. Learning from the histories of Darth Revan, Darth Bane discovered that the dark side of the Force was more powerful when there were fewer Sith left in the galaxy. And because of this, Darth
Aid station
Bane
marked.
formulated the rule of two, bringing to pass the ancient prophecy. The prophecy that foretold of a Sith Lord that would destroy the Order, but would rebuild it more powerful than ever. Darth Bane was this chosen one, the Sith Ari. Realizing this, Bane eventually destroyed the Sith and rebuilt it from the ash, using what is known as the Thought Bomb. After this, the Sith again changed. They no longer focused primarily
Oh, sit here. Really, dude. Now I'm bumming back. Ah, man, pissed right now. Fuck it, dude.
The enemy took that one, but we'll be back to finish the job.
purely on combative prowess. They became intellectuals and influential individuals in the galaxy, with great power not only when concerning the Force, but in all its aspects. The definition of power for these Sith became far different than that of their ancestors. So to answer the question, yes, in some ways the ancient Sith were more powerful. That inherent and pure connection to the dark side being a big reason as to why. As time went on, the Order became diluted, mostly through Jedi teachings as a result of many prominent Sith being former Jedi themselves, and that pure connection to the dark was somewhat lost. However, the more modern Sith were far more advanced and powerful in other ways. In my opinion, many of the Sith of Bane's era, or the Rule of Two era, such as Sidious and Bane himself, rank amongst the old masters of the Golden Age of the Sith, as far as power is concerned, potentially being more powerful than many of them. So for this one, there is no definitive yes or no, as the Sith and their evolution are akin to an axe and a saw. Both are powerful and productive, but in very different ways. But there is Here's the answer, my friends, and what are your thoughts on this ultimate conclusion? In your opinion, are the ancient Sith Lords in fact more powerful than the modern Sith Lords? And if you were to succumb to the dark side of the Force and join one of the orders of the Sith, would you want to belong to the more ancient Golden Age or the Rule of Two era? Personally, I like the idea of the Rule of Two and advancing in other aspects not strictly pertaining to the dark side, but again, that's just my own opinion. As always, my friends, I appreciate your support on the channel. It means the absolute world to me. May the Force At this moment, Yoda turned, and Dooku gasped, whether it was the play of the holomonitors beaming their views of bleak space and distant battles, or some other trick of the light. Yoda's face was deeply hidden in the shadows, and for one terrible instant, he looked exactly like Darth Sidious. Or rather, it was Yoda as he might have been, or could yet become. A Yoda gone rotten. A Yoda whose awesome powers had been utterly unleashed by his connection to the dark side. In a flash, Dooku saw how foolish he had been, trying to urge the old master to the dark side of the Force. If Yoda ever turned that way, Sidious himself would be annihilated. The universe had yet to comprehend the kind of evil that a Jedi Knight of nearly 900 years could wield. This passage comes from the Star Wars Legends novel Yoda Dark Rendezvous, where, for only a moment to prove a point, the Grand Master of the Jedi Order embraces the dark side of the Force to illustrate just how deadly the repercussions would be if Yoda ever used and fully allowed the dark side of the Force to corrupt him. A lesson for his former Padawan Dooku. Dooku had previously been urging Yoda to use the power of the dark side. The truth being that Yoda had never really been tempted by the dark side before, never wanted to taste the power, never desired to even touch into the dark. In this moment though, Yoda allows the dark powers to seep in, and to use the dark side of the Force, perhaps for the first time in his long life, realizing to himself that he may actually be more naturally gifted in the dark side than he was in the light. As Dooku puts it, using the knowledge and abilities developed by 900 years of training as a Jedi would be devastating for use in the dark side. Dooku clearly states here that the power of Yoda gone rotten would eclipse that of even Darth Sidious, the most powerful non-entity Star Wars character of his time, with the only rivals of the Force between Yoda and Sidious being Anakin Skywalker if he reached his full potential as the Chosen One, as well as Luke Skywalker in the decades following. It is amazing though, and terrifying, that Yoda is stated here to be more powerful in the dark side than even Sidious, again according to Dooku. In Legends as well as canon, Sidious is stated as the true culmination of an entire era of the Sith Rule of Two. Sidious is a result of hundreds of years of dark side training, and knowledge passed down from master to apprentice. Sidious is the alpha and omega of all of the Rule of Two Sith, and cannot be stopped by any mere Jedi. The fact that Yoda's inherent power could eclipse even this power of the Sith is amazing and unheard of, giving few days we've highlighted several members of Yoda's species, most notably Yoda himself and Jedi Master Yaddle, both of which were Jedi Masters that reigned during the Clone Wars era of the Star Wars galaxy. But for the topic of this video, I would like to talk about the first ever Jedi that we know that was actually a member of Yoda's species, a Jedi Master that was around thousands of years before the time of Yoda, Anakin Skywalker, and the Clone Wars, and is in fact the first known member of Yoda's species to ever appear in Star Wars. I want to make it clear clear that this video is very much Legends continuity, and we will very rarely be pulling from canon, if at all, within the content of this video. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into the video, and today we will be talking about Jedi Master Vandar Tok'er. Not much is known about Tok'er's life as a Jedi Padawan or even a Jedi Knight, but we actually know quite a bit about his time as a Jedi Master. Something really unique about Vandar is he actually managed to complete his training on the Jedi's homeworld of Ossus, the same planet where the first Jedi organized themselves over the forces of the dark side. After Vandar became a Jedi Master, he first focused his efforts on the criminal underworlds of more of the inner rim planets as a Jedi, and after decades of working, he was actually able to reduce crime in all of the inner worlds a substantial amount. Again though, this was an ordeal that took decades. Vandar was known as an exceptionally sharp Jedi Master who would not take kindly to those that disagreed with him. However, his knowledge and wisdom on the Force was unparalleled, but also he was denoted as an extremely deadly lightsaber duelist, wielding in lightsaber combat not one, but two lightsabers at any given time. We know that Master Vandar, similar to Yoda, was a master of Ataru. However, he implemented Jarkai dual blade fencing into his lightsaber form, meaning that, although this may be hard to believe, Vandar was actually more of an aggressive duelist than Yoda. He used these great skills in part to intimidate a lot of the crime in these core inner worlds, as the truth is, Vandar was simply far more powerful than any of the gangsters that he came into conflict with. And again, he liberated several worlds nearly single-handedly, although some Jedi did arrive at times to help. It was during this period of time, after Master Vandar had served as a warrior, that he began to take on the role of a teacher among other Jedi. Vandar was given a unique honor, with the Jedi High Council allowing him to have his own Jedi enclave on the planet of Dantooine, being known as the Grand Master of the Second Jedi Academy. Again though, I want to make it clear that the High Council on Coruscant also had its own very Grand Master, and Vandar had a seat on this council. It would be on the planet of Dantooine that Vandar would train young Jedi in the ways of the Force for several more decades, being at least several centuries old at this point in time, the time when the Mandalorian Wars would first break out in the wider galaxy. Not much is known about Master Vandar during the Mandalorian Wars, and it's unknown if he ever actually directly participated in any conflict. For those of you that need a refresher, it was initially the wish of the Jedi High Council not to involve themselves in the Mandalorian Wars, after the Mandalorians invaded the Republic, but with the help of the Jedi Knight Revan, he took a group of Jedi Knights to fight off the Mandalorians, eventually defeating the Mandalorians, but in the process discovering a deeper plot against the Jedi, a plot orchestrated by their ancient enemy, the long-believed destroyed Sith. It would then result in Darth Revan and his friend Alec, of course, becoming Dark Lords of the Sith themselves, being brainwashed by the Sith Emperor Vitiate. For several more years, Revan and Malak would reign terror against the Republic, until Revan would be betrayed by Malak when Malak fired upon his master's ship. Fortunately for Revan, there were actually Jedi aboard that ship that managed to save the Dark Lord of the Sith, bringing him back to the Jedi High Council. For a lot of the Jedi High Council, it was their initial intention to execute Darth Revan on the spot, deeming him too dangerous to be left alive. However, Vandar was one of the few Jedi that spoke up in Revan's defense, saying that if they could wipe his memory, he could prove instrumental in eventually defeating Darth Malak and the other Dark Lords of the Sith that Vandar expected were still out there. And it was because of Jedi Master Vandar's influence on the Council that Darth Revan was allowed to again train as a Jedi. However, they did wipe his memory completely first. Vandar actually became the new Jedi Master of Revan, training him again after his memory had been wiped, and showing him the path and power of the light side of the Force, ultimately proving to be successful and a superior master to other Jedi that Revan had encountered in the past. After Revan successfully defeated his former apprentice Darth Malak in combat and killed him, Master Vandar deemed Revan completely redeemed, re-granting him his rank as Jedi Knight, and also deeming him the Prodigal Knight. Unfortunately though, this would prove to be one of Jedi Master Vandar's final last deeds, as his death would soon come in the years to follow. After Revan escaped into the unknown regions of space with the determination to hunt down the Sith Emperor Vitiate and kill him, he utterly disappeared. His true fate would not actually be known until decades later. During this time though, a new Sith threat arose from a different point than the Sith Emperor Vitiate, in the form of Revan's former Jedi Master, his original Jedi Master Kreia, now calling herself Darth Traya. With Darth Traya, she actually organized 2 other mighty powerful Sith Lords that had served during the Mandalorian Wars. A Sith Lord so ingrained in pain that he could not die named Darth Sion, and a Sith Lord who had been transformed by a super weapon that had been set off during the Mandalorian Wars, a weapon known as the Mass Shadow Generator, and a weapon that had utterly Wars, a Sith Lord so ingrained in pain that he could not die named Darth Sion, and a Sith Lord who had been transformed by a super weapon that had been set off during the Mandalorian Wars, a weapon known as the Mass Shadow Generator, and a weapon that had utterly changed this man into something far less than human, and maybe not even a Sith Lord anymore. This Dark Lord of the Sith was named Darth Nihilus. Unluckily for the Jedi Order, it had actually sustained 3 massive galaxy-spanning wars in about the time period of 50 years, starting with the Great Sith War, followed by the Mandalorian Wars, and then the Great Jedi Civil War conflict. As a result of this, the once proud and prominent Jedi Order had dwindled substantially in number due to these many conflicts, with Jedi Master Vandar though being one of the few that had seen the conflicts since the beginning. Again, unfortunately for the Jedi Order though, Traya, with the help of her 2 apprentices Sion and Nihilus, brought a lot of the Dark Jedi that remained in the galaxy out of hiding. Dark Jedi that prior had served the Dark Lord Revan, and even some Sith Lords that survived the Great Sith War, all of them united under the power of these 3 Sith Lords. With the Sith united, the Jedi Council quickly discovered that small gatherings and groups of Jedi were being wiped out slowly but surely, with several Jedi Watchmen in the Outer Rim never being heard of, and none of their Padawans or Knights ever being heard from again either. This strange phenomena in the Force actually seemed to move around, as more and more groups of Jedi seemingly just disappeared out of thin air with nothing but a disturbance in the Force being left behind. The signs of Jedi grew less and less in the galaxy, and the Jedi High Council determined that they were being hunted, thus would begin the first Jedi Purge. As a result of this, all of the great and powerful Jedi left in the galaxy reconvened on the planet of Dantooine. They did so in order to take count of what remained of the Jedi, as well as formulate a plan on what to do with the Sith, and a seemingly unstoppable force that was wiping them out group by group. Master Vandar was in fact one of the first Jedi that believed that it was the Sith that had returned and were slowly but surely wiping out the Jedi. However, as I stated earlier, great tragedy would befall Master Vandar, as it was revealed that the Jedi Atris had actually leaked information where the Jedi were going to be, in an effort to draw out this enemy, believing that this great force of Jedi would be able to stop them. Unfortunately, she was wrong. Out of hyperspace emerged the Sith Lord Darth Nihilus, who, with the power of the dark side of the Force and Force Drain, drained the entire planet of all of its Force energy, including all of the Jedi present on the planet, again, including Master Vandar, as it was on the planet of Tatooine where the first known member of Yoda's species met his final end. But not all hope was lost. The Sith would later be defeated, and Master Vandar's knowledge and wisdom would be passed down in the form of a holocron considered most precious among the Jedi Order. As far as more information that we know about Vandar, it is believed that he was actually raised as an extremely young child by the Jedi Order, because unlike characters like Yoda and Yaddle, he speaks very common basic, meaning that he does not mix up his words when he speaks, indicating that he never really spent much time on his core world. Another interesting trait about Vandar is he actually has a surname as well, making him the only member of Yoda's species to have a surname. Again, perhaps something that had to do with the fact that he was raised by the Jedi and not members of his own species. As far as Vandar's skill, we already touched upon his skills in lightsaber combat, although I also want to say that by the time at the end of his life and death at the hand of Darth Nihilus, he had grown extremely weak. In years earlier, though, he was exponentially more powerful in the Force than many other Jedi, including being a master and an expert on many obscure Force abilities, including Force abilities like Sever Force, which allowed him to cut off the Force from beings powerful with it and able to tap into it, as well as the ability of Force suppression. In addition to this, instead of using a cane in his old age, Master Vandar actually used the Force to levitate. But even more than this, in lightsaber combat, he chose sometimes to wield his dual lightsabers telekinetically, an extremely dangerous and rare practice among the Jedi. Master Vandar is actually one of my favorite EU characters, a character that has a long and layered history among the Jedi, and again a unique specimen as he's the first ever member of Yoda's species to appear in Star Wars. But that was the full story of Jedi Master Vandar, and what are your thoughts on this character? And had you heard of this character before this video? As always, my friends, thank you guys so much for watching the videos. It means the world to me. May
Einstein's special theory of relativity combines space and time into one dynamic unified entity, space-time. But if time is connected to space, can the universe be anything but deterministic? And does that mean that the future is predestined? In the last episode, we saw that we could think of the unified space-time in terms of the block universe, an atemporal entity that sort of just exists. In a block universe of Einstein's relativity, there's no way to cleanly define the present, and so no way to cleanly separate the future from the past. The notion of the present is relative. To us, it looks like a particular slice through the block universe. But different observers will slice the block at different angles that depend on their velocities. That means that for every observer it's possible to imagine another observer who lives in their definition of the present, but for whom your future is already the past, or for whom your past is their future. But how does this give us a deterministic universe? Well, if we accept a unique reality for those other observers in our present, and we accept that their perception of the present is as valid as ours, then all of the future is defined. That seems to support the philosophical stance of eternalism, the idea that all space and time exist from a sort of God's eye view from outside of both space and time. And it suggests a deterministic universe where every slice through the block universe is completely determined by every other slice, either behind it or ahead of it. They are connected by the unalterable laws of physics. So here's the big question. Given that relativity is definitely a good description of space and time, what would it take for our future to remain undefined? It seems we have two options. Either the entire block universe is defined past, present and future, or everything outside our past light cone is undefined, including other observers and the room around you in what you would normally think of as the present, and the only aspect of the present that exists is a vanishingly small patch of space-time around your own brain. In order to even try addressing which of these options is right, we need to take into account something we've totally ignored so far. Where relativity is the key to understanding the universe of the large and the very fast, we also need to understand the universe of the very tiny. We need to see what quantum mechanics says about determinism and how it plays with relativity and the block universe. According to quantum mechanics, physical systems, parts of the universe, evolve as wave functions, not as well-defined reality, but rather as distributions of probability that describe all possible states that chunk of the universe could be in if it were to be observed. The wave function can be thought of as a state in which all physically possible realities intermingle. Countless extremely precise and frequently replicated experiments tell us that the universe really does exist in this indeterminate state in certain circumstances. The wave function is real. The big question is what causes the transition from this world of quantum indeterminacy to the solid singular reality of the macroscopic world. We've talked about this profound weirdness in many episodes, including how to interpret it. Now, exploring those interpretations again may help us understand the state of the universe beyond our immediate selves and the immediate moment. One of the earliest and still most accepted interpretations of all this weirdness is the so-called Copenhagen interpretation, which states that a quantum system is literally in a state of undefinedness until observed, at which point the wave function collapses into a defined state. All particles take on defined properties, and one actual reality is chosen from the many possible ones, at least as far as the Heisenberg uncertainty principle allows. The Copenhagen interpretation gives us a non-deterministic universe. The wave function evolves in a precise way, perfectly defined by the equations of quantum mechanics, but at the moment of measurement, a single reality is randomly selected from the distribution of possible realities. The dice are thrown when the wave function collapses. That means it's fundamentally impossible to predict the state of a system after observation. Another popular interpretation of quantum mechanics is the many worlds interpretation, which simply states that the wave function never collapses. Instead, all possible states of the quantum system continue to exist. Rather than choosing one reality out of many, when we observe a quantum system, we sort of just become part of one of the realities and lose track of the others. The many worlds interpretation gives us a deterministic universe, or rather a deterministic multiverse. The wave function never collapses, it evolves deterministically forever. The illusion of randomness is that we find ourselves in the one branch of the wave function corresponding to the reality we perceive. But we aren't randomly placed in that branch, we just are a part of that branch. So how do these interpretations connect with what relativity tells us about past, future, and present? Let's start with Copenhagen. It's tempting to equate everything outside our past light cone with the unobserved wave function. You can imagine that light cone sort of just ploughing through the undefined universal wave function, collapsing it as it goes, or at least the parts of that wave function for which signals actually reach our awareness. That leaves your future light cone undefined, a non-deterministic void with room for your non-determined choices. But now, let's say we believe that other observers in the universe can also collapse the same universal wave function with their observations. Well, no problem so far. You can imagine this fleet of observers collapsing the universe all the way up to what you perceive as the present. Your future is intact. But wait, we saw last episode that your impression of the present is relative. A fast-moving observer defines the present very differently to you. In fact, any part of space-time not in your future light cone is potentially the past for another observer in your present. And that observer can imagine a third observer on their different present for whom your future light cone is in their past light cone, so it should have already been collapsed. The upshot is that with no way to define an absolute definition of the past, And if we believe in other observers, there's no way to keep the wave function of your future from being collapsed before you get there. Now, there are subtleties in this wave function collapse idea. Copenhagen doesn't specify what causes the collapse. It could be observers, as in the von Neumann-Wigner interpretation. That's the hardest to gel with a non-deterministic universe, unless you're the only observer in the universe. More physicists prefer the idea of a non-conscious interaction causing the collapse. In that case, uncollapsed wave functions tend to exist only in microscopic pockets or in very special circumstances. But that doesn't help uncollapse your future. No, the only totally coherent way for a non-deterministic wave function collapse interpretation, like Copenhagen, to give you an uncollapsed future is if you're the only being doing the wave function collapsing. Let's move on to many worlds. This interpretation sits a bit better with the relativity of past, present, and future. Your light cone sweeps through the global wave function, but it doesn't collapse that wave function. Rather, it selects from it. Sometimes the quantum multiverse of many worlds is depicted as this branching tree in which the realities multiply as time progresses. In the block universe picture, it's tempting to depict this as the entire block multiplying with every quantum event, but that's not quite right. A division in the block universe can only propagate as quickly as the result of that quantum event can become known. That can happen at the speed of light, so we can also think of the splitting as proceeding in advancing light cones. Really, what's happening here is that parts of the universe become entangled with each other, correlated at a quantum level. So we have these spreading webs of entanglement. Each such web defines a set of properties of the universe correlated with some prior quantum decision, with an independent web existing for all different possible decisions. Here we're bringing in the concept of decoherence and quantum Darwinism, which we've covered before. Decoherence is an explanation for how the worlds can become separate from each other when you shift from simple systems like an atom to complex systems like a cat. According to the decoherence explanation, the quantum multiverse isn't a cleanly divided set of alternate realities, rather it's a tangled network of alternate sub-realities. Nonetheless, as your light cone moves forward in time, you encounter these entanglement networks and you have to choose between them. Your reality is the particular set of entanglement networks that you interact with, and there are other realities with different networks that contain different versions of you. I should add that the light cone picture isn't ideal here because entanglement can travel faster than light. However, light speed signaling is the surest way to transfer quantum correlations, so this is still a useful picture. So, what does all of this say about determinism and the reality of your past and future? Well, interesting things actually. The evolution of the wave function is deterministic. That means all future branching of the wave function of your present, by which I mean the entanglement network that you currently belong to, is predefined. What isn't defined is your own experience of that future branching. You will be the thread of conscious experience that travels one of those branches. You'll also travel the others, but each version of you will only feel like you traveled one of them. This interpretation, many worlds plus decoherence, perhaps gives us the most concrete notion of an objectively existing present. It's that part of the global wave function that you're connected to via entanglement and that shares your timestamp of now. But the notion of now remains relative. There are still other observers in your slice of reality for whom your now is their past or future. Copenhagen and many worlds aren't the only interpretations of quantum mechanics in town. We should make an honourable mention to de Broglie-Bohm pilot wave theory. This is an entirely deterministic interpretation that doesn't have multiple realities, just a wave function that guides particles in a perfectly determined way, defined by Bohmian mechanics. Of course, we've talked about all of this before. The universe of pilot wave theory is really a block universe. But unfortunately, no one has convincingly figured out how to make Bohmian mechanics work properly with special relativity. So it's a very simple block universe, and it's not a good representation of ours. There are other interpretations that deserve mention, but we're out of time. So, does the future already exist according to quantum theory? The answer depends on your favourite flavour of quantum interpretation. Perhaps we ride the dice of Copenhagen into an unknown future, or surf the splitting quantum multiverse into all futures of which you will become just one. Of course, we still haven't got to why time needs to progress in one direction at all, or how time even arises in the first place. But we'll have plenty more time for time another time on Space Time. Hey everyone, last week we introduced the idea of the relativity of simultaneity and the block universe and what this might tell us about the reality of the past and future. At least I think it was last week. The whole time thing's very muddled in my head these days. But let's see what you had to say. Anonymous makes some important points. I'll summarise. In Einstein's relativity, the definition of simultaneous events is, well, relative. It depends on relative velocities. So does that mean that the idea of a now slice through the block universe is meaningless? Well, maybe, but two observers can certainly construct a map of events across the universe that they would define as happening simultaneously at a given instant in time, their slice of now, and compare those maps, even though they have to wait until the light reaches them to do so. So the now slice has a precise meaning. What it does not have is the property of clearly and currently existing to the exclusion of other slices in the block universe. And that's where the relativity of simultaneity connects to eternalism. If you can ascribe actual existence to one slice of the block universe, to one observer's definition of the present, then you should ascribe existence to the slice of the present as defined by any potential observer on that first slice. And that fills the block universe, past and future. The alternative seems to be to not ascribe reality to any observers present. But then what exists? Just the one observer? At any rate, the relativity of simultaneity doesn't prove eternalism, rather it shows that presentism, or the idea of the growing block, interpretations are incoherent. And speaking of presentism, Carl Stanlin raises a point that highlights another objection that I have to the concept. If only the instant exists, what is that instant? Is it a very short stretch of time, like one Planck unit of time? Or is it a truly instantaneous stretch of 0 seconds? As much as physicists hate to talk about consciousness, I think it's relevant to bring up here. Our conscious experience exists. In fact, it's the only thing we can observe directly. But that experience almost certainly is emergent from the action of our neurons, and those neurons take time to fire and communicate across the brain. So something that currently exists, our consciousness, is smeared out over at least 100 milliseconds of time. At least that length of the present should be thought of as real. You might argue that our conscious experience rides the leading edge of the brain's action, emerging in a true instant, synthesizing prior brain activity. But for that to be a true zero-time instant, then it would need to be the instantaneous state of the brain, the momentary spatial configuration of its particles at that instant that gives rise to our conscious experience. So then does a frozen brain just experience the current instant eternally? Most probably not. Rather, consciousness surely requires dynamical processes, a flow of information. That means that at least a short chunk of the block universe has a real current existence, much larger than the Planck time. And if that much time can exist, then why not all of it? Guillermo Marcassani takes issue with my characterization of Einstein as the smartest man in the block universe. Dude, I said block universe, not universes. Rick is the smartest man in the multiverse. Also, I'm pretty sure Einstein was another renegade from the Citadel of Ricks. The resemblance can't be a coincidence. And for those uninitiated into Rick and Morty, there are other funny pop culture references in the comments. Drake gives a nice Douglas Adams quote, "Time is an illusion, lunchtime doubly so." Grandpa's Place reminds us of Doctor Who's experience of time as a big ball of wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey stuff. But really, you should also just go and watch Rick and Morty. Think of it as a co-requisite study course to PBS Space-Time. Wubba-lubba-dub-dub. Is all that exists just whatever exists right now? Is the past erased? And is the future a void yet to be filled? Well, the answer lies between the past and the future in the elusive, ever-moving eye blink that we call the present. Today, we're starting a deep dive into the nature of time. And down that rabbit hole, we'll encounter the physical origin of time, the question of determinism, and even what this tells us about consciousness and free will. Big questions that'll take us to the edge of what physics can answer, and perhaps beyond. But today, we're definitely doing physics because physics already tells us a lot about the reality of the past, future, and present. We think of the world that exists as the world of the now. The past is gone, except in our memories, and the future is a blank slate ready to be written into the past. But interpreted in some ways, physics suggests that the future and the past exist eternally, while the present is an illusion. To show you why this might really be the case, we need to actually visit the past. As with many ideas in physics, this one originates with Isaac Newton. Newton was the first to come up with a set of laws that allow us to predict the motion of all objects in the universe. Newton's revelations led to the notion of the deterministic universe, the idea that by knowing the current position and velocity of every particle in the universe, as well as the forces that act between those particles, you could calculate all future and past states of the universe. Now, quantum mechanics might argue that the universe is not deterministic depending on which quantum mechanics you prefer, but we'll come back to this question in an upcoming episode. Newton's picture of the universe included one other assumption that we know for sure is wrong. It included the idea of an absolute, clearly definable now. Newton assumed that all particles, all observers, all points in space were ruled by a single constantly ticking clock. This universal clock meant it was possible to define a notion of now that everyone would agree on. And so everyone would also agree on what was the past and what was the future. Here's a nice way to represent Newton's picture of space and time. Let's cut out one dimension of space. Space then becomes a 2D slice at a given instant in time. Now let's stack successive instants so that time becomes the third dimension. Every slice is the same universe at a particular instant, and it evolves from one slice to the next according to the laws of physics. We only experience a single slice at a time, and we usually think of the universe in that slice as the one that currently exists. But we can also imagine a perspective from outside both space and time in which this entire structure just exists. From that perspective, time doesn't have a particular direction and there's no preferred present. Time is just a dimension like space, and we only observe a flow of time if we play the slices in sequence like a flip book. We sometimes use the term block universe or block time to refer to this view of all space and time as just existing in this four-dimensional chunk. The flip book of the block universe has to be played in the right direction to see emergent phenomena like the sequence of cause and effect, evolving patterns of structure and information, entropy, and even our conscious experience, which itself emerges in the forward evolution of patterns of information in our brains. Our awareness of the universe rides this forward-moving wave of the present. To us, none of the rest of the block universe exists because our existence emerges from the forward evolution of a razor-thin slice. Although that perception of existing at a single instant in time is definitely an illusion, our awareness, in fact our conscious existence, is sort of smeared out over a couple of hundred milliseconds. But that's a topic for another, time. Another way I like to think about this is that 4D spacetime is a vinyl record, and our subjective experience is the music coded in the grooves. Viewed from the outside, the whole thing exists, but the music only emerges if played in the right direction. Now, nothing plays the block universe, it just is, and temporal phenomena like us are just embedded in it when you look at it the right way. There's a name for this idea that all of time, future and past sort of just exists in this atemporal structure. It's eternalism. The opposite viewpoint would be presentism, which posits that only the current instant has a meaningful existence. and the past is erased and the future still blank. The middle viewpoint would be that of the growing block. That's the idea that this shock front of the present creates the block universe as it proceeds forward, sort of weaving the past out of nothing. Believe it or not, we can actually science these very philosophical ideas with just a little help from the smartest guy in the block universe. The representation of the block universe that I showed you is very Newtonian. We had a single time axis that everyone agreed on, and everyone agreed what slice of the block was currently the present, and which sides were the future or the past. Newton says there's only one way to slice the universe, but Einstein says otherwise. In his special theory of relativity, Einstein showed that there's no absolute way to define whether two events happen simultaneously. The present, past, and future are relative concepts. Let's pick this apart. How do we even say what now means for other parts of the universe? Nothing, not even information, can travel faster than light. That means any distant event is already in the past by the time we see it. We represent the region of the block universe that we can possibly perceive with a light cone. Signals from things inside that cone have had time to reach us. The boundary of the cone holds the paths of light speed signals. Whatever events live on that cone represent the universe that we see around us, carried to us by light. Any event above that cone is unseeable in the present. We'd have to wait until our light cone moves upwards to encompass it, which is the same as saying we'd have to wait until its light has had time to reach us. Our entire time slice of our present is never observable in the present. To map it, we need to wait. From your point of view, you are motionless. After all, motion is relative, so we can define your motion as stillness. That means as time passes, you move straight up, fixed in space, only moving through time. As that happens, signals begin to reach you from the time slice you're trying to map. Successive shells of light from more distant parts of that time slice arrive one after the other, expanding your view. Okay, so the present seems definable, if only in the future. But what happens if you compare your mapping to someone else's? If that person is also still, or moving at your same speed, they map the same present. But if they're moving relative to you, then things get weird. To you, they seem to make a mistake. They are racing towards one set of incoming signals and away from the other. At the same time, their entire perception of the space-time grid is warped due to their motion. We talked about this warping via the Lorentz transformation in a lot of detail previously. The upshot is that the moving observer builds an entirely different map of that time slice. They define the present differently. In fact, it's possible for another observer to be in your slice of the present, but for you to not be in theirs. So that's the effect of Einstein's special relativity. Space and time sort of tilt into each other, so that different observers will slice up block time at different angles depending on their velocities. Even your own sense of the present changes with your motion. Start moving forward, and your slice of now will skew. Ahead of you, things once in the future will become the present, and behind you, the past becomes the present, and what was once the present is now in the future. Walk in circles around the room, and your entire now slice tilts crazily like a ship deck in a storm. Nearby, the effect is tiny, but the present at the edge of the observable universe veers back and forth by a couple of centuries every time you switch direction. Try it, but be careful, it can make you dizzy. Let's get back to the question. What does all this say about the reality of the past and future? Well, imagine that the future is created as a wave of the present sweeping out a block universe. But where is that wave? Whose slice? At a given location in space, you can lay down all possible time slices representing possible presents. The largest tilts are for things travelling at the speed of light, and these sweep out the future light cone. In front of the future light cone is a region that is in the future for everyone, no matter what their speed. So is that the future that doesn't exist until created by the evolving present? Well, that can't be right. Consider the time slice of our present. we can imagine other observers on that time slice that surely must exist. After all, they could have travelled to those points from our own past. They have future light cones similar to ours, but offset in space from ours. The space beneath their future light cones defines all possible definitions of the past to them, just like it does for us. So now, fill our present time slice with observers, and there remains no part of the block universe that couldn't be considered the past according to someone who lives in our present. Let's take stock. It's hard to accept that only the present exists, that only the current slice of the block universe has meaningful reality, because it's impossible to define what that slice actually is. It's also hard to accept that only the past exists and the future doesn't, at least in the sense of a growing block universe, again because the present of someone else on your slice of present could be literally any point in your future. So we're left with two options. 1. The entire block universe has a meaningful existence. Or 2. If you don't want the future to exist, then you need to deny the existence of the present beyond your own immediate experience, which can include events only from your past light cone. Nothing outside that section of the block universe can be ascribed a definite reality until you interact with it. That second stance feels extreme. It feels like the definition of solipsism, that your own subjective experience is the only thing that we can be sure exists. But there's a way to humble this notion, to make it more palatable to the materialist, to those who like to believe in an actual universe independent of the self. And that means most physicists, including this one. To rescue materialism without demanding a perfectly defined personal future, we need quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics tells us that all this stuff outside our past light cone and even unobserved aspects of the world within that cone exist in a state of indeterminacy until observed. Depending on how you interpret quantum mechanics, that could be evidence in favour of this solipsistic denial of external reality, but quantum mechanics can also save materialism and determinism if you like. But to do so, you need all possible realities to exist simultaneously and persist into the future. Now, we've talked about these ideas before when we discussed the Copenhagen and many worlds interpretations of quantum mechanics, but soon we'll dive back in to see what these ideas imply about time, determinism, and what it would mean to live in a block multiverse space-time. To everyone who helps us out on Patreon, once again, thank you so much for your support.